Welcome back. Now we're going to take present value and future value, and we are going to create a template that allows us to account for deposits, growth of interest, with withdrawals or payments is another synonym for withdrawals, payments. And this is another way that we can break down the minutia or the inner workings of cash flow within present value and future value. Before, we weren't accounting for present value and future value when we were figuring present value and future value in the previous assignment, but now we have cash flows. And on the side of this spreadsheet, you can see we have CF0, cash flow 0. We have cash flow 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then down here I have 3 periods, which basically means that if with the multiple problems that we have, we can just copy Command C or Control C, depending on what you're using, Command or Control V. And what this does is, if in our next cash flow, say problem 2, on our next cash flow, we actually have more cash flow periods, we can just hit Insert, Shift Cells down, and that way we're not messing up some of the formatting that you might see here. Do that a couple times and say we're going to go to 10, and then you can come up here, and it's a little painstaking. There's other ways you can go about doing this, but for the sake of our assignment, we're not going to be too critical of this. And then you can just grab and highlight all those just so it's in the sequence, because if you just grab CF5, it probably wouldn't continue on. But if you just select CF1 through CF5 and then drag it down, it'll copy and paste in sequence. But the reason why I did those 3 dots is so that you can just copy and paste the template and reuse it. So let's come back up here, and off to the side here, I'm going to create another one, and we'll use the one to the left as an example. So first off, we have a box that is 5 columns wide and about 11 rows high. So what I like to do is I like to separate the problems so we can see. Here, let's just do problem X. Okay, let's do capital there. And right here, we're going to do periodic interest. Okay, now remember, periodic interest is different than annual. Sometimes it could be the same. If you're compounding annually, your periodic interest could be your annual interest, but most often we're going to be compounding on a monthly basis or something else. So just keeping that in mind, that's what periodic interest represents, is the interest broken down into the compounding periods. For our example, we're going to do 2.5%. Let's do that with 0. Okay, and then we have our column titles. So deposits, withdrawals, interest, and balance. And here I just did some formatting. It looked like some of that formatting carried over, but basically what we want to do is, let's spell correctly here. I just like to format things, keep it nice and clean. We're going to center those titles, and then we will come down here to CF0. You don't have to put PV here. That's more than anything for educational purposes. We can go CF1, and then what we'll do is we can bring this here. I'll just drag that down to CF5. And then there's that extra row for copying and pasting when duplicating. Okay, so let's copy this example off to the left. Say we have a deposit at cash flow 0, so say CF0 is today, we have a deposit of $7,500. Okay, and what we can do is we can actually just come up here and hit the currency, and then that'll give us the decimal places. And I think in a previous video I may have said get rid of the decimal places, but let's actually keep it to the 100th place, or 2 significant digits after the period. Okay, then we have our withdrawals column. We're not going to do anything with our withdrawals column quite yet. Then we have our interest column. So how do we figure interest? Well, interest will be figured off of our balance. And since we put the money in today, cash flow 0, no time has passed for interest to accrue. So what we're going to do is we're just going to hit our balance equals 7,500. Okay, and then what I did here is, since this is an input, it's not a calculation, I'm just going to change it to blue. I want you to get in the habit of changing your manual inputs to blue and your calculated equations stay black. That way you know if you need to go through and manipulate things, you can. I failed to do it here, but this should be blue too, unless you have this data and you're searching for your periodic interest. But as of right now, we're not. We are plugging that in, and so we're going to highlight it as blue, as a variable that we input. Okay, then what we do is we are going to figure our interest based off of the previous cash flow balance. So we'll take equals 2.5%. Now we're going to copy and paste the balance column in just a second. If we were to do that just with I3 as it is, it would continue to drag down through CF2, CF3, CF4 by moving the I3 down to I4, I5, I6, I7, and it wouldn't calculate properly. So we need to absolute reference, or lock that cell in. And on a Mac, that is Command T. Seeing the dollar signs? The dollar signs represent that it's absolute reference or locked in. You can also type those in manually if you'd like. On a PC, I believe it's F4, the command for absolute reference, but we need to lock those in. Then what we're going to do is we'll multiply by the previous cash flow balance. Now, we're not going to absolute reference K6. And the reason why is when we copy and paste, we need that to drop down into the next cash flows. Okay, so our interest for that first cash flow is $187.50. Okay, and then what we do is we take the balance plus the interest, which will give us our new balance. Now what we want to do is, in case we add new deposits throughout the cash flows, we actually want to go and manipulate the formula just a bit more. So I like to put parentheses. It's not necessary, you could do it without it, but I just like to chunk things up so I know what's going where, and then it kind of just helps the order of the math. But what we need to make sure is that balance is including any potential deposits, so we need to add that. And then we need to subtract any withdrawals that may occur, and then we are going to do plus, because we're not multiplying, plus the equation that we have here, okay? And that will give us the balance. Now what we can do, since this is absolute reference, the interest, the I3 is absolute referenced, and that is not absolute referenced, and let's hit escape, and this formula is incorrectly, we can just select these two rows here and drag down. Okay, so our future value of this amount of 7,500 over 5 cash flows will be $8,485.56. And what's cool about this is now if we ever wanted to add, and let's just make sure all those cells are highlighted blue. If we ever wanted to do withdrawal, let's say we do a $300 withdrawal, and let's make sure. Okay, and you know what, let's go through here and let's manipulate this just a hair. Let's change this to plus, because what I want to do is when we're putting in our withdrawals, we should actually be putting those as a negative, just so that we can see it visually and see how we formatted it to the accounting format. We put the negative 300 in there, and it puts the parentheses around it, which indicates a negative number. And you can see that now our interest and our balance recalculate based off those numbers. So let's go ahead and do negative 200 again right here. And you can see that it recalculates. And mind you, that is an input, so let's make sure that that's blue. Okay, so that is how we're going to create this template. Now, what I want you to do when you do the assignment, I don't want you copy and pasting off to the side like we've done here. I want you to copy and paste, and this goes for all the assignments that you submit. And I want you to go below, okay? And I just want you to keep coming down, coming down, using the same columns, because what I want you to do when you're done, I want you to set the print area. So go ahead, and we're gonna say your assignment will have more than just 3 problems, but say that's all we had. We're gonna highlight those areas. We're gonna come up to File. You can't see my file, I apologize. File, Print Area, and you can see now that the print area is kind of popping up there, and we're gonna set the print area. What that does when we set the print area is that makes it so that it fits everything widthwise on the paper. And that way we're not getting half of these cells here cut off when you go to convert it to a PDF. I've had students submit their document that way, and it's very confusing and pain to try to grade. So this is absolutely critical to get that print area. And now you can see that dashed line, those lines there, that indicates the print area. Okay, so let's just take a peek. So sorry, I'm gonna go, actually let's do the command P, which is the command for print. And right here on my computer anyways, I can hit this button and it allows me to save as a PDF. Okay, or you can go Control Save and save it as a PDF too if you want. So let's do example, and I'm just gonna do that to my downloads. Okay, and now what I'll do is I'll pull this up for you and show you what that print area looks like. Okay, so see how we've done the print area. Now the document isn't wider than the page width, but what it does is it makes it so that it doesn't cut it off. If you were to take problem 2 and put it right here, it probably would cut it off. The print area would cut it off, and it would bump it to another page. It gets messy. So that's why I say take your problem 1 and take your problem 2, stack it underneath problem 1, problem 3, stack it underneath 2, and so on until you finish the assignment.